Lone soldier in dark battlefield. Night had swallowed the battlefield whole. Smoke drifted like wandering ghosts, and the ground trembled under dying echoes of war. In that endless darkness, one soldier walked alone. Not because he wanted to, but because there was no one left to walk beside him. Every step felt heavier than the last. Every breath carried the taste of dust and loss. He didn't know if he was walking towards safety or straight into death, but he kept moving. Because in a world destroyed by war, walking forward was the only hope he had left. Old trench covered in fog. The fog crept into the trenches like a living creature. Slow, silent, and cold. He could barely see his own hands, yet he felt the presence of danger everywhere. The trenches smelled of mud, sweat, and memories that refused to fade. Every corner held a story. Every shadow held a warning. He moved slowly, listening to the distant rumble of artillery, wondering if this fog was the last thing he would ever see. In the old wars, the fog was feared more than bullets, because it hid everything, even hope. Soldier writing a letter under lantern light. The battlefield outside roared like a beast. But inside that small trench corner, he sat under a dim lantern, writing the words his heart had carried for months. His hand shook, not from fear of death, but from fear that this letter might be his last. The ink smeared, the paper trembled, and the lantern flickered with every breath of cold wind. "Mom," he whispered as he wrote, "if these words reach you, know that I fought till my last breath, not for glory, but for the hope of seeing home again." And the lantern burned on, like the final light of a fading soul. Abandoned battlefield with ruins. He stood in the ruins of a battlefield that once pulsed with life. Shattered walls, burnt trees, broken helmets. The ground was a graveyard of shattered dreams. Every ruin told him a story of courage and of defeat. He moved through the silence, hearing only the crunch of debris under his boots. A world once alive had turned into dust and shadows, but he kept searching. Searching for survivors, searching for hope, searching for a reason to believe that war hadn't stolen everything yet. Soldier silhouette near barbed wire. The barbed wire glistened under the pale moonlight, sharp, twisted, merciless. He stood before it like a man standing at the edge of another world. Behind him was everything he had survived. Ahead of him was everything he feared. The wind howled across the fields, pulling at his coat, whispering warnings he tried not to hear. But he didn't move, because in war, even standing still was an act of courage. And in that lonely silhouette was the story of every soldier who had ever dared to hope.
Burnt Village Street. He walked through the ashes of a village that once held laughter and life. The houses were nothing but skeletons. Doors hung broken, windows shattered, memories buried under soot. He imagined the children who once played here, the families who once shared meals, now reduced to silent dust. War had taken everything from this place, leaving only smoke and sorrow behind. As he stepped through the ruins, he felt the weight of a world that could never return to what it once was. Soldier with lantern in thick fog. The fog was so dense it felt alive. His lantern glowed like a tiny star swallowed by a sea of darkness. Every few steps he lifted it higher, hoping to catch a glimpse of a path or a threat. The silence was terrifying. Even his own heartbeat felt too loud, but the lantern kept glowing, a fragile promise in the deepest night. In that lonely march through the fog, he realized, sometimes the smallest light carries the greatest courage. Candle-lit trench interior. A single candle burned in the corner of the trench, its flame trembling like a frightened child. The soldier sat beside it, his face half hidden in shadow. The war outside raged like a monster, but in that small circle of light he found a moment of silence. He touched the flame with his eyes, remembering the warmth of home, the laughter of family, the peace he once knew. The candle flickered, reminding him that even in darkness something still fought to survive. Silent battlefield at midnight. Midnight settled over the battlefield like a funeral shroud. The wind paused. The earth rested. Even the war seemed to hold its breath. Fallen helmets lay scattered like broken crowns. Rifles pointed to the sky as if asking for mercy. He walked carefully, knowing that silence in war was never a friend. It was the quiet before the next storm. But for a few fragile moments, he allowed himself to believe that the night belonged to peace. Battlefield rainstorm. Rain poured down in heavy sheets, mixing with mud and blood, washing the battlefield with cold indifference. His uniform clung to his skin, his boots sank into the earth, but he didn't stop. Rain hid tears, rain hid fear. Rain hit everything a soldier didn't want the world to see. The storm raged above him, but he kept moving, knowing that to stop was to surrender. And surrender was a luxury no soldier could afford. Soldiers reading a crumpled letter. The night was quiet, but their hearts were not. In a dim corner of the trench, the soldiers gathered around a crumpled letter, one that belonged to a brother who would never return. The paper was torn, stained with dirt, rain, and maybe a little of the writer's last breath. As the words were read aloud, the men felt something break inside them. A letter from a dead soldier was more than ink on paper. It was a voice returned from the edge of the world. Each sentence carried a memory. Each line carried a promise. And each word reminded them of the price they were all paying. Sometimes the battlefield didn't fall silent because the guns stopped, but because their hearts did. Soldier walking through burnt forest. The forest had once been alive, full of birdsong, sunlight, and green leaves. Now it stood blackened and broken, every tree a charred skeleton reaching for a sky that no longer cared. The soldier walked slowly through the ashes, each step releasing a small cloud of gray dust. The air smelled of burnt wood and forgotten dreams. He could almost hear distant laughter, echoes of a world before the fire, before the war, before everything turned to smoke. But the forest was silent now, and so was he. War didn't just destroy the living, it destroyed the places that once gave life. Foggy hill with battlefield graves. On a lonely hill, where the morning fog rolled like a tide, stood wooden crosses marking the resting places of the forgotten. The soldier approached them with slow steps, his breath turning white in the cold air. Each cross carried a name. Some he knew, some he didn't, but all of them felt like brothers. The wind whispered between the graves, carrying stories that the world would never hear. He removed his helmet, lowered his head, and closed his eyes. In that moment, the war fell silent, not out of peace, but out of respect. The hill stood as a reminder. Heroes don't always return, but they never truly leave. We close-up of soldier's tired eyes. His eyes told a story his voice could never speak. Dirt clung to his skin, shadows clung to his soul, and exhaustion carved deep lines across his face. He had seen too much fire, too much fear, too many faces disappearing into the smoke. In his eyes, you could still see the young man he once was, buried beneath the weight of battles no human should ever carry. His stare wasn't just tired, it was haunted. Haunted by memories that followed him like footsteps in the dark. This was the face of a soldier who fought not just with bullets, but with the hope that somehow, someday, the war inside him would end.